For years, I lived a quiet and fulfilling life with my loyal companion Max. He wasn't just a pet, he was family. A strong, intelligent, and well-trained dog, Max had been by my side through thick and thin. As a federal judge specializing in animal rights law, I had seen countless cases of unjust treatment toward animals and their owners. But I never imagined I would be the target of such an attack myself. Our days were simple: morning walks in the park, long afternoons by my desk as I worked through cases, and peaceful evenings where Max curled up at my feet while I read. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. He wasn't just well-behaved, he was beloved. That's why the notice I received in the mail that morning caught me completely off guard. I tore open the envelope, my eyes scanning the words in disbelief. You are hereby ordered to surrender your dog to the authorities due to reported violations. My heart pounded. Violations? What violations? I had spent years ensuring Max was properly licensed, vaccinated, and trained. This had to be a mistake. But as I read further, my stomach sank. Someone wanted to take Max away from me. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to enter the legal battle of my life. I immediately called the number listed on the notice, demanding an explanation. A cold, disinterested voice on the other end responded, "Sir, there have been multiple complaints about your dog. We have reason to believe he is a danger to the community." My grip tightened on the phone. This was absurd. I pressed for details. Who complained? What were the accusations? But the official refused to answer, only repeating, "You'll need to surrender your dog within 72 hours, or legal action will be taken." I wasn't just furious, I was suspicious. I knew the law inside and out, and nothing about this felt legitimate. If there was a real complaint, I would have received a proper investigation, hearings, or at least a chance to respond. Instead, I was being steamrolled, as if someone expected me to blindly comply. That's when I decided I wasn't going to just fight this. I was going to expose whoever was behind it. I wasn't about to surrender my dog without a fight. As a federal judge specializing in animal rights cases, I had seen my fair share of corrupt officials and shady tactics. I decided to start at the source, the Animal Control Office. The next morning, I walked in dressed in my usual suit, but keeping my title to myself for now. The receptionist barely looked up when I stated my case. "Sorry, sir. The decision's been made. Your dog must be turned over." I leaned in. "By whom? Where's the official report? What's the case file number?" The woman hesitated. I don't have that information." Red flag. I kept pressing. "Who filed the complaint? What's the exact allegation?" She fumbled with her computer. "It's, an anonymous report. Multiple complaints." I knew the law. Anonymous complaints couldn't justify a seizure. And if there were multiple reports, they had to be documented. Something wasn't adding up. I glanced at her name tag. "Listen, Michelle. I know when I'm being given the runaround. I'd like to speak to your supervisor." Now, her face went pale. She knew she had messed with the wrong person. Michelle hesitated before making a call. Within minutes, a bald, heavy-set man in a wrinkled shirt stomped out from the back office. His name tag read, Director Thomas. He crossed his arms. "What seems to be the issue here?" I gave him a sharp look. "You're attempting to seize my dog based on an anonymous complaint. That's illegal. Show me the official documentation justifying this order." Thomas scoffed. "Sir, we don't need to show you anything. We have the authority to remove animals deemed a public nuisance or unsafe." I smirked. "Oh, really? Under which statute?" "Because under the Animal Welfare Act, an official investigation must take place before any removal. And as a federal judge specializing in animal rights, I know you're violating the law." The blood drained from his face. He cleared his throat. Well, the complaint is serious." I pulled out my phone. "Then you won't mind if I record this conversation for legal purposes, right?" His eyes widened. "There's no need for that." I pressed record. "Then let's discuss. Who filed the complaint? What exactly were the allegations?" He fumbled with a stack of papers, avoiding my gaze. I could smell the corruption. Then I saw it, buried in the pile of documents, half covered, a complaint form with a signature. The HOA president. A slow smile crept across my face. "So this isn't about my dog at all. This is about HOA retaliation." And now, I have proof. The panic in Thomas's eyes told me everything. He knew he was cornered. Thomas started sweating. His confidence cracked like thin ice. He shuffled his papers, trying to regain control. "Look, sir, this is just standard procedure," he mumbled. "We're just following up on a complaint." I leaned forward. "You mean a complaint filed by the HOA president, who has a history of harassing homeowners? A complaint with no evidence, no investigation, and no due process." Silence. "You know what that sounds like?" I continued. "Unlawful seizure, abuse of power, and a direct violation of federal law." Thomas gulped. I turned to Michelle. "Do you have body cam footage of this encounter?" She hesitated. "We do, but I'd need authorization to release it." I pulled out my business card. "Here's your authorization. As a federal judge, I can subpoena that footage in court." Thomas's hands twitched. "There's no need for all that, sir. Maybe we can just drop the case." I smirked. "Not so fast. You threatened to take my dog away without legal cause. That means I'm well within my rights to file a civil lawsuit." His face turned pale. "A lawsuit?" "Oh yes," I said. "And since this involves a disabled person's service animal, you're looking at violating the ADA. That's a federal offense, punishable by heavy fines and legal action." Thomas frantically turned to Michelle. "Can we just close this complaint?" Michelle nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely. Consider the case dismissed." I folded my arms. "Good. But I'm not done yet." Their shoulders tensed. "I want a written statement clearing my dog of any wrongdoing. I want an apology for the stress this caused my son. And I want confirmation that the department will review its policies to prevent future cases like this." Thomas clenched his jaw but nodded. "Fine. We'll handle it." I smiled. "One more thing. I'll be personally reporting this to the State Ethics Board. Let's make sure this never happens to another family again." His jaw tightened, but he had no choice. "Understood." I turned to leave, but not before giving him one last look. "Next time, remember, justice isn't just a word. It's the law." With my son's guide dog safe by his side, we walked out. I had won. And the HOA? They had no idea what was coming next. Word spread fast. By the next morning, my inbox was flooded with emails from other homeowners. Turns out, I wasn't the only one targeted by the HOA's ridiculous rules. One neighbor got fined for having a welcome mat that wasn't approved. Another was threatened for planting non-compliant rose bushes. And someone else? Their service dog was nearly banned from common areas. This wasn't about my son's guide dog. This was a power-hungry HOA president on a rampage. So I did what I do best. I gathered evidence. I spoke to neighbors, collected emails, violation letters, and complaint records. Even found a case where the HOA misused funds for personal projects. Once I had everything, I filed a formal legal complaint, not just against the HOA, but against its president personally. And that's when things got ugly. A few days later, I received a warning letter. Apparently, my front lawn lights were too bright. Nice try. I pulled up the community guidelines and found zero mention of brightness limits. I responded with a legal notice demanding proof of violation, or I'd file for harassment. The HOA backed off, but they weren't done. I started noticing a car parked near my house every night. The same car. Watching. Waiting. Then an anonymous complaint was filed against me, claiming I was running a business from home. That's when I knew. The HOA was trying to intimidate me. Too bad they had no idea who they were messing with. A few weeks later, the case against the HOA went to court. I walked in armed with white heavy checkmark testimonies from neighbors, white heavy checkmark financial records proving misconduct, white heavy checkmark emails showing their pattern of harassment. The HOA president? She looked smug at first. Probably thought her connections could protect her. But the moment I presented a class action lawsuit, her confidence vanished. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled. The HOA violated the Fair Housing Act by targeting disabled residents. The president was personally liable for misusing funds. The HOA had 90 days to reform its rules or be dissolved. And that wasn't all. The president. She was removed from her position immediately. As I walked out of court, I saw her glaring at me, red-faced, furious, defeated. I just smiled. Justice had been served. And my son, he kept his guide dog, his freedom, and his dignity. The HOA tried to take everything from us, but in the end, they lost it all. Case closed. Fire. You think after getting humiliated in court, she'd back off. But no. A week later, I got a certified letter from the HOA's legal team. Cease and desist. Apparently, I was defaming the HOA by sharing the truth. I almost laughed. They were bluffing. But then things got worse. One morning, my son took his guide dog for a short walk. That's when a mystery van pulled up. A man stepped out and tried to grab the leash. HOA rules state that all pets must be reevaluated for community approval, he said. I stepped outside just in time. And I wasn't alone. See, after everything that happened, I installed security cameras. And I wasn't the only one. A few neighbors, who had also been victims of the HOA's power trips, started keeping their own cameras rolling. When I walked out, my neighbor Dan was already filming. You really want to go viral, buddy? Dan smirked at the man. The guy panicked and bolted back to the van. But we got the license plate. And guess what? The van was rented under the ex-HOA president's name. She actually hired someone to take my son's guide dog. I immediately took the footage to the authorities. Since my son's guide dog was registered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, attempting to remove him was a federal offense. Within 48 hours, the police knocked on her door. And this time, it wasn't just a lawsuit. She was arrested for attempted theft, harassment, and conspiracy. Her last words before being taken away? I was just enforcing community standards. Yeah, tell that to the judge. With her out of the picture, they fell apart. Residents voted to dissolve it entirely. The ridiculous rules, gone. The fines, refunded. And my son, he never had to worry about losing his best friend again. As for me, I sat back, sipped my coffee, and watched as the HOA that tried to control my life was wiped off the map. That's what happens when you mess with the wrong federal judge. Justice served. Again. Prison life wasn't exactly a gated community. No power. No fancy meetings. No other rules. Just cold metal bars and a bunch of people who didn't care about her title. She tried pulling her "I'm in charge" routine with the other inmates. Big mistake. One of them, a 6-foot-tall woman with tattoos up both arms, laughed in her face. Oh, honey, you think you're the boss here? The next day, the ex-HOA president was seen mopping floors in the cafeteria. Not by choice. Meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, something hilarious happened. A few months after the HOA dissolved, her old house, it was bought by a local animal rescue organization. They turned it into a rehabilitation center for rescue dogs. The irony? Every single day, people walked past, bringing in stray dogs for care, right in front of the house she once ruled. Poetic justice at its finest. And as for me, I sent the rescue center a little donation. A final cherry on top of the perfect karma sundae.